Thank you for viewing this innovation vlog brought to you by the Prosecutors Center for Excellence. My name is Sophia Roach, and I'm joined by the Howard County, Maryland State's Attorney, Rich Gibson. He's here to tell us about their very innovative law enforcement assisted diversion program, also called LEAD. So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about your jurisdiction.
Yeah, so Howard County is the sixth largest jurisdiction in Maryland. There are approximately 330,000 residents, thereabouts. And we're situated between two major metropolitan centers. We're about halfway between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. Baltimore to our north, Washington, D.C. to our south.
Hey, how many prosecutors does the office employ?
So our total staff is approximately 92, and about 45 or so are prosecutors.
All right. And tell us a little bit about Project LEAD. Why is it making a difference?
So LEAD has been a phenomenal tool. It stands for Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, and it really is, while spearheaded by my office, it's a collaborative effort. Mm-hmm. So we were joined by our county executive's office, the police department, Howard County Police, Howard County Sheriff, Parole and Probation, Department of Corrections, our public defender's office, and obviously the governor's office of youth crime, youth protection services, victim services. It used to be called GOCAP. They changed the acronym for Maryland, but it's the governor's office on crime. They actually provided funding for the LEAD program.
And explain it to us a little bit. What's the process that somebody might go through, either to be a recipient or to be qualified for it, anything of that nature?
Sure. So we're looking for LEAD is a diversionary program. It's designed to avoid introducing people to the criminal justice system. And really, from my perspective, it's about having additional tools in which to solve the problem of crime in our space. And so I believe that certain offenses deserve a draconian response because they're particularly horrible. But for minor offenses, maybe we don't need to saddle anyone with convictions, which create further impediments on their successful involvement in our society.
Right.
And so LEAD is focused on the low-level offenses, so like alcohol intoxication in public, small misdemeanors, CDS possession, fourth-degree burglaries, rogue and vagabond, disorderly conduct, nuisance crimes like trespass, open alcoholic container, urinating in public, those kind of offenses. And we look at individuals that don't have a record that says they're not a real problem for society. They're not pose a threat to the society in terms of violence.
Right.
Looking for low-level offenses, people with relatively moderate backgrounds, but maybe repeat offenses of a low nature. So you could have multiple trespasses or multiple public urinations. And we're looking for someone who is completely voluntary program. So someone who's at a point in their life where they feel like they've done enough, they've been through enough, and they really want to make a change.
Right.
And then, as opposed to adding an additional conviction, we marry that person to services. Mm-hmm. So we immediately, the officer makes, the way it would work in terms of functionality is, officer would make contact with the individual, reach out to the prosecutor's office, we determine collaboratively this person's a good candidate for LEAD. If they're enrolled, we contact the LEAD coordinator. The coordinator would meet the officer. That officer would then go back out into the field, be redeployed for more serious offenses, which is why the police like it, because it frees up their time. Making arrests is a very time-consuming process.
Right.
And then the LEAD coordinator marries them to services. So if someone, hypothetically, you're stealing work boots because you have a job coming up that requires you to have work boots, you don't own it, right? Well, we would buy the work boots for you. We give you employment, education training. We might give you medical referral if you have any medical issues. Try and deal holistically with the issues that are driving the individual's actions towards crime. And that's really the goal of the program. It's not meant to be used as a catch-all. It's targeted, surgical, smaller in nature, but driven by low-level crime and a need for services versus the need for punishment through incarceration.
And it seems like those are a lot of the crimes that disturb communities just kind of on a basic everyday basis. You know, people who are having to deal with the after effects of public intoxication, or, you know, their property being vandalized or trespassed or something of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is something that, particularly for business owners, if someone's constantly like urinating on the side of their business, it's going to be a detraction for other customers, detraction for their business. It's an annoyance. But maybe we don't need to criminalize that person. Maybe we just need to figure out, why are they urinating here? Like what is causing them to engage in this particular criminal behavior? And can we help short of involving the justice system?
Well, and realistically, the penalties for some of these lower level crimes are relatively minor because the offenses are relatively minor. And so it really almost seems like it doesn't do much to discourage recidivist behavior versus getting somebody maybe into housing or some other thing that they need. So tell us, oh.
I'm sorry, Sophia. Yeah, employers see that. So like, let's say someone was trying to turn the corner, but they've got a long history of trespassing or open alcohol containers. That might make an employer hesitant to hire, right? And so we want to try to reduce those pinch points to make it easier for someone to be a contributing member of our society.
How have you found the community response to be? It seems like this program has really been lauded and publicized quite a bit.
It's great. I would say, so the people that know like it. Whenever I talk about it at public forums, there's a positive response. Mm-hmm. And there are a number of reasons for that response I'll get to in a second. But as far as the other piece, I think increasing the knowledge of the program in the community is something you always have to work at, because those that are informed, but it tends to be a smaller subset of the total population. So 300,000 people are in Howard County. I'm willing to bet that probably less than a fifth know about the LEAD program. Like it's a very small number, and you're constantly making the community aware. I think it's good in our particular community to make them aware for two reasons. One, I think our community is welcoming of restorative practices. Mm-hmm. Right? So our particular community is welcoming of that attitude towards crime when appropriate, obviously. Right. And then secondly, I think it's important to dispel the prevailing notion that all prosecutors want to do is lock people up. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a common belief that we are sort of one-trick ponies, a train on tracks, as it were, and we are only looking to incarcerate and lock up and charge people. And yes, we do that because the facts bear out and the law bears out, and it's a worthy expenditure of our time. We do that under those circumstances. But we also are trying to address crime as a whole. And in doing that, we want to make sure that we are taking or engaging in practices that are likely to reduce criminal behavior. And certainly the LEAD program gives us an opportunity to do that.
Well, you really answered my next question, which is why is it important for prosecutors to be involved? But in your discussion that you just had, where you explained that, it also occurred to me that being more public about this aspect of prosecution work is really going to be helpful in recruiting the next generation of prosecutors, which, let's face it, we're having difficulty recruiting because they only see the train or the hammer nail. They don't see this part of thoughtful application to the criminal justice system.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that while I wouldn't say the coverage are bare, right, I would say that we certainly have seen a differing trend in terms of how we're viewed. Right. And I think historically, the media has painted prosecutors in a positive way, law and order kind of thing. And I think recently, in the last several years, there's been a more negative view of law enforcement as a whole. Right. Some of it deserved, some of it completely undeserved. I think painting with a broad brush is a bad idea. You need to, be nuanced in your assessment of things, people, entities, governments, et cetera.
Agreed.
But I think that, yes, there is currently there's a lot to overcome for prosecutors, for people to draw people into the field, because I think there is a prevailing notion that, again, we're we're here to put people in jail and lock people up. And that is not reflective of my experience. I've been a prosecutor for 19 years. It's not reflective of my experience. Like, yes, we lock people up when they do stuff that deserves being locked up, but we don't just go forward, willy-nilly. We evaluate every step of the way. We use our own discretion. We aren't rubber stamps for the police. We analyze, assess, and work collaboratively with our law enforcement partners to hold people accountable when they choose to commit crimes.
Well, do you have any advice for jurisdictions who might be thinking about implementing an innovation like this? I mean, what are your best tips?
So I think it's definitely a worthwhile process. I think that it's something that adds value to the office and to our community. It is time consuming. We have operational work group meetings every 2 weeks, so we're constantly assessing the candidates coming in, what they need. Do we need to change anything? So it's an ongoing process. It is time consuming, less time consuming than trial, but still time consuming. And we also have a joint community advisory board, which is made up of community members and members of our office. They meet once every other month. So there are going to be meetings. It's not just completely hands-off process. It is hands-on, but trial's hands-on, and trial's very hands-on, and it's also very time-consuming. So I think it's a worthwhile process. I will add one other thing, which is that it helps to have a collaborative environment. Again, my office spearheaded this program, but we are very much part of a larger team. And whether it's the health department or the governor's office or public defender's office, it's helpful if we're seen as partners versus adversaries, because it allows us to collaborate without any second guessing of the motivations behind why we're doing what we're doing. And that kind of, it makes a more fruitful process. So having a collaborative space, if one already exists, is going to make things a lot better. If you're in an environment that there's more hostility between the different entities, it could be an olive branch upon which to start building towards a more positive relationship, more collaborative relationship, if that's what you choose to do within your jurisdiction.
Well, I really want to thank you for sharing this innovation with us, and thank you to our viewers. If you would like to share an innovation with us, please contact PCE directly at contactpce@pceinc.org. Thank you again for your time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.